All right, let's talk about the Miami Hurricanes. Coach Cristobal, we've talked about this for pretty much the entire offseason. It's in a make or break kind of year for Miami. I think we all understand that. Carson Beck coming into the fold. Him, Cristobal, and his staff have done a great job, both the recruiting and the transfer portal for 2025, but they're also doing a great job under the radar, both for the short, medium, and long term, with a key move they made in terms of the recruiting strategy, and it's yielding massive results that should hopefully, it seems likely, honestly, in my opinion, to lead to a just big step up for Miami in terms of deep postseason runs. We'll get to that reporting in just 1 second. But first, I'm Nick. That is Andrew, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, the Miami Hurricanes under Coach Cristobal have done a great job in recruiting on paper. They've gotten a lot of talent, and honestly, it's led to some very successful seasons. Last year ended in disappointment, but let's be totally honest, this was a very good team with a little bit better defense. I think they're a playoff contender, and they probably make a pretty good run out of it. Cam Ward, I think, would have made a lot of noise in the postseason. Carson Beck, of course, is now in Coral Gables. He's doing a lot of good things. But when you look at what Coach Cristobal has done in terms of the past 2 years, when it comes to recruiting, he's made a clear decision and a great execution on this decision to put this Miami Hurricanes team in a great spot to make deep postseason runs for the future. Let's get into this latest two articles here. Then we'll get into the data behind this on the other side. So these are two tweets according to the great Hayes Fawcett. Give him a follow. He's got all the great recruiting news on Twitter or X or whatever the kids call it these days. This first one up here, breaking class of 2026, interior offensive lineman Cannon Pickett has committed to Miami. The 6'5", 320-pound interior offensive lineman from Tampa chose the Hurricanes over Florida and Clemson. All right, the second report there, breaking class of 2026 defensive lineman Tyson Bacon has committed to Miami. The 6'4", 270-pound defensive lineman from Hoover, Alabama, chose the Hurricanes over Georgia, Florida, and Ohio State. So you can see a couple similarities there. These are kids, specifically the Hoover, Alabama product, Bacon, deep SEC country. We're talking Alabama, LSU, Georgia, Florida, of course, deeply involved. Tampa isn't exactly Miami. For anyone's any sort of familiarity with the state of Florida, this isn't like a South Florida kid by any stretch of the imagination. Still, the Hurricanes were able to get him. And I think over the past 2 years, what Coach Cristobal has done, when you take a step back and look at where he's collected his recruits, he has taken a different approach. If you look at what Miami has done in prior years, they focused on South Florida and kind of the state of Florida at large, but primarily South Florida, and then try to go national. What Cristobal has done specifically the past two seasons is he's focused on South Florida, but then try to dominate and create a big footprint, mainly in the Southeast. Let's pull up this chart here to explain exactly what I'm talking about. So this is for the percent of the class from SEC states, Southeastern Conference states. Now, look, I know a lot of people, oh, here we go, the SEC. I get it, but there's a reason they're winning national titles and making deep playoff runs almost every single year. A season where an SEC team doesn't win a national title is honestly kind of a shocker to people. We've seen it back-to-back years. That's Michigan, Ohio State. That's two old school blue bloods if there ever were them, right? That's basically the only teams that can knock out the SEC. Otherwise, it's SEC dominance. If you want to win national titles, you got to win in the SEC when it comes to recruiting. And you can see Coach Cristobal going back to 2023, only 75% of his class from the SEC states. Most of that was Florida. Most of that was South Florida or very close to South Florida. And then he went nationally. Go places like Connecticut and Indiana. Nothing wrong with those states, but honestly, the SEC states a little bit better in terms of football product. And then you see starting in 2025 and 2026, he elevates from 75% of the class in SEC states, pretty much all that in Florida, to 85% of the class from SEC states. He traded prospects from Indiana, Connecticut, Michigan to Alabama, like we're seeing from the Hoover, Alabama kid recently, Bacon, the guy I just mentioned. You can see more Louisiana guys, Mississippi guys, Carolina guys, Tennessee guys, Georgia guys. He is building, Coach Cristobal is building essentially a South Florida Miami team as their priority, but with the secondary trait of having an SEC talented roster with depth across the board. This is a really smart strategy. This is an important approach by Coach Cristobal. Miami coaches in the past, when they try to replicate the U Glory days, they all seem to have taken the approach. Coach Cristobal did this too for a while of we're going to win South Florida, we're going to win Miami, and then we're going to be the national program because everyone knows who we are. Not a terrible strategy. But the reality is it's much easier in today's day and age with NIL dollars, with hyper competitiveness, with social media to win regionally than it is nationally, right? If you're trying to go to Connecticut to win a top prospect, guess what? It's not like it's 1993 and there's only ESPN broadcasting a couple games. This kid has access to every game. He can see Michigan, he can see Notre Dame, he can see USC, he can see Arkansas, for God's sakes, right? It's a much more competitive environment. Focus on regional and attack and win the most talent rich region in the country for prospects, and that is the Southeast. Cristobal, it was a risky move, risky gambit, doing a little different over the past couple of years, but his strategy is working wonders so far. I think going forward this season and certainly the years beyond, we'll see that extra depth, that SEC burst mixed with the South Florida talent base that will push this Hurricanes team to a whole new height. All right, Miles, I'm curious what your thoughts are on all of this. But first, Hurricanes fans, in the comment section below, we've got a lot of interesting questions we love to ask this time of year as we get closer to the regular season. So let me ask you one right here. What is your favorite memory in terms of a football game, a specific game for the Miami Hurricanes? Is there one game, one moment in that game that really sticks out at you? There's, of course, a lot of big games involving Miami, some good, some bad. Looking at you, Ohio State 2002 National Championship game. But I'll ask you guys now, what is your most memorable, and I'll say your favorite Miami Hurricanes memory just of all time? Let us know in the comment section below. But Miles, over to you now. What are your thoughts on everything Coach Cristobal is doing and just the general direction of this Miami program?
Yeah, Nick, I think Miami is doing something good. And it's like you said, this is, a change. It was a risk. It was something that, they figured, hey, we got to do something differently. And already it seems to be working. I think what they did will get them so far, going nationally, going out. But like you said, if you want to win it all, if you want to be that contender, if you want to make the college football playoff and dominate, you got to start competing with the SEC teams because it's really, two Big Ten teams and everybody else in the SEC. That's who it is. That's who your competition is. And to be honest, you got to compete with them day in and day out and make people get the recruits that they're getting, dominate the areas that they're trying to dominate. And I think this is a good start for the Hurricanes. But something we talk about a lot is it's a body of work. So I think this is going to be the start of something special for the Hurricanes because it's going to take a couple of years of recruiting in these SEC territories to get the same effect as the SEC teams. I think about one more good, they can get a good grasp on this in the 2027 class. Come 2027, having all of these recruits, we're going to see consistency. Not saying that they can't go win it all next year, not saying that this is a team that's going to do good, but instead of seeing spikes in performance for Miami, I think this new SEC approach, staying South Beach, staying hyper local, but then also just kind of staying around home, not going to New Jersey, not going to Ohio, places like that as often, staying in the Southeastern Conference, I think it's going to create a more consistent approach for the Hurricanes and really have this team compete, but continue to compete to be national championship contenders down the road. Because all in all, that's what you really want. I think, teams are fine. If you're a program that, pops up, does something good. Let's say you make the college football playoff. Let's say you win a national championship. That's fine and good. And I think that's, really important to do. But what would you rather have? A team that is constantly over the course of 10 years being a contender and competing for that, or have one big win and then just kind of fall to mediocrity the other years around that win? It'll be nice in the moment, but when your team after 3-4 years, it kind of loses that luster if you're a mediocre team. So I think the long-term effects of what Miami's doing here is going to pay off big time. I think the consistency and the ability to compete with these SEC teams in those recruiting regions is going to do a lot of good for the Hurricanes. And I think we're going to see improved finishes for them across the next few years because of it.
And it has sort of a double-edged sword effect, right? Because if you're weakening SEC, if you're taking a prospect from Florida, if you're taking a prospect from Georgia, from Texas, from LSU, those are likely playoff competitors for future playoff runs. So it's not just you're getting better in terms of instead of, and I'm not trying to hate on prospects from like Connecticut or Indiana. There are a lot of great football players. I'm just saying, I think we all can agree on this. We can all be adults about it. Generally speaking, prospects from the Southeast are better than prospects from those states that I mentioned before. Not in every case, just generally speaking. But if you get some of those kids and you don't get a kid from Indiana, you don't get a kid from South Dakota, but instead get someone from Louisiana or Mississippi or Alabama, you're not just getting a good prospect, a better upgrade than you would have gotten in terms of what you were looking for going back in terms of strategy, focusing on a more national approach. You're also weakening your opposition. Now LSU doesn't have that kid. Now Georgia doesn't have that kid. Texas, Alabama, they don't have those players. And that will help you come postseason time when you're matching up against that school. Now Tennessee, now Georgia, now Alabama, now Florida. Now they got to go look for kids. So now they got to try and figure out another prospect. You're making your competition in terms of what you would see in the postseason. You're making their life a lot harder while also getting better on your own end. And this is where a lot of programs, I think, make the mistake in terms of ACC competition. This is where Clemson, as much as a lot of people, I'm sure Miami fans hate Clemson, this is where they got it right. When South Carolina dipped after Spurrier and Tennessee was running into problems, Clemson literally went into all of these areas that were hotbed of SEC talent and said, pull them in. They started, come to Clemson, come to Clemson, come to Clemson. And they won all these kids and they won national titles because of it, right? A lot of programs that aren't in the SEC say, we can't compete. Let the SEC get their kids. We'll focus on our own areas and try and figure out our little niche. You will only beat the SEC by going toe-to-toe with them. Clemson proved it. Miami is proving it recently. This is the right approach to take. It takes a big risk for doing this because when you have a national program like Miami, it's easier for Clemson to do it because they're not national. But when you have a national program like Miami and you back away from national and focus more on regional, it will raise some question marks. A lot of people, what's going on there? What's going on with Cristobal? What's he doing there? A lot of people have that thought, but it's the right approach. It's the right mentality to make. We're seeing the results in terms of the roster makeup, much higher percentage of guys from SEC states. And because of this change, I think we'll see much more significant postseason runs. And like you mentioned there, we're not talking, a one-year Cinderella story makes you feel good. We're talking about sustained success over seasons and potentially decades, finally returning to Miami.